morning, Transit. How are we feeling, everybody? Amazing. Wow, I love the energy in the room. It is such an exciting day. I mean, getting to celebrate Emma's baptism. Can we give it up for her one more time? It is a great day to be here in Transit for sure. And if I haven't had the chance to meet you yet, my name is Ashlyn, and if it's your first time with us here at Transit, I'm so glad that you're here this morning. And I'm so glad that you get to be here to see the celebrations that we have and the fun that we have. And I really, really hope that you come back. But all of you chose a great Sunday to be here, and we're actually in the second part of this series called The Struggle is Real. And now this is a pretty cliche saying that we often use when, things are not going according to our plan. And I think that's the point of this series, to kind of remind all of us that, things don't necessarily go our way all the time, but we're not in it alone. Because I think every single person in this room would admit that, hey, yes, the struggle has been real for me. I mean, I even think back to my own middle school experience, and there were plenty of things that did not go according to my plan. But, one in particular was I didn't feel like I got, the opportunities or the freedom or the independence that some of my friends got. Specifically in regards to technology. I didn't get a phone until I was in 7th grade. Yes, didn't get it in 6th grade, didn't get it before that. 7th grade, and it was actually on my birthday. It was a surprise, and probably one of the best days of 7th grade for me. But I wanted to show you a picture of the type of phone that I was given. So we're going to put it up here. Yes, isn't she a beauty? Yes, thank you for the cheer. Guys, this is the LG NV3, and I will never forget the name of this phone because it genuinely was a highlight of my 7th grade year. And I mean, this phone had so many cool capabilities. I mean, it could call people, I could text people, I could play a little game called Snake on the phone. Any adults remember that? Yes, thank you. I was pretty cool, and this even was a step above because, students, you may not know this, but a lot of phones at the time, they only had this type of keyboard called the T9, and it took you approximately 20,000 years to send one text because you had to click each button 5 times to get the letter that you wanted, and God forbid you missed the letter, and then you have to start all over again. So this one actually came with this keyboard called the QWERTY keyboard. I mean, had every single letter of the alphabet. I was speedy with those texts that I was sending. So, as you can tell, I was excited to get this. However, I was also excited because my parents were like, we are giving you a certain portion of our phone plan that is just for you to use. And I was like, man, this is awesome, all for me. And they're like, yeah, you get 250 text messages a month. And I was excited. But I don't know about y'all. If you ever miss a group text for an hour, you come back to your phone and you've got 135 right then and there. And so I figured out 3 days into the month, I was going to have to start rationing my text messages. And I was only going to respond to the people that I wanted to respond to because I can't waste a text message here and there. And so all of a sudden, something that was so exciting and something that I thought would bring so much freedom and exactly what I wanted actually brought some frustration and some limitation along with it. And I bet you I'm not the only one in life that has come up against a limit that has kind of changed what my dream was versus the reality that I'm actually experiencing. And so this morning, I want to actually define this word limit as this: any barrier between what we want and what we can actually get. With my phone, I wanted the freedom and the access that the phone would give me. I wanted to be in on all of the inside jokes that would come up in these group texts with my friends. I didn't want to feel behind or feel left out. But because of this barrier of only 250 text messages a month, there were some things that I continued to miss out on. And so maybe as I'm talking about this, you're thinking, oh man, I've got some of these too. It's bringing up some beef and some tension that you have with some of these limits. And maybe for you, it's hey, my screen time is limited. I can only be on my phone for this many hours a day. And so I feel like I'm missing out. I feel like I'm not getting exactly what I want. Or maybe it's limited on how late you can stay out at night. And you're like, man, I'm missing out on this time with my friends because I have to be home at a certain time and they don't have to be. Or maybe you're just missing out on something that you really, really, really wanted to do, but there's this life event that gets in the way. And maybe it's a good thing, but it keeps you from being a part of something that you wanted to be a part of. Or maybe I take it a step further, and yes, these things can be a little bit annoying, but maybe there are things in your life that are limiting you that might actually be discouraging, or maybe they're actually a little bit scary. And you're like, hey, I think I'm limited when it comes to navigating the academics that I have to take part in school. Or, hey, I think I'm limited when it comes to growing different family relationships because of my story and my background. Or like, hey, I think I'm limited when it comes to my health. Like, you don't know what I'm walking through. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know what I'm going to have to go through. And so there's a lot of different limits that we can face on a daily basis. And I think if we're not careful, the more that we tend to spend time thinking on them, the more that this internal narrative becomes a reality for us. And we say that I can't blank because of the things limiting my life. I can't make friends because of this curfew that is set for me. I can't make this team because I'm not physically strong enough to do so. I can't make good grades because I'm not a good test taker. Or I can't feel peace because my family dynamics at home are not all that great. Maybe it's like, hey, I don't think I can experience joy because I'm in and out of doctor's offices week after week, and like, you don't know what toll that takes on me. I don't know exactly what each one of you are carrying, but I do know that each one of you probably has an answer to this blank. Some that annoy you, some that frustrate you, and some that can weigh pretty heavy on you. But I want to let you know that I'm glad you're here because you're in good company. We say the struggle is real, and it's because the struggle really is real for all of us. We all encounter scenarios like this. And the struggle has been real for people that have come way before you in life. And so you have heard us talk about the Apostle Paul. And oftentimes when we talk about him here in Transit, we talk about what an incredible and influential leader he is, what an amazing follower of Jesus that he was. I mean, he wrote almost the entire second half of the Bible. If you look at the New Testament, so many of those letters were written by Paul. And so we look up to him. That's why we take time to learn from him. But sometimes we often forget that, hey, he was human too. And in just as much as we have limitations or things that seem to get in our way, he had those as well. So this morning, we're actually going to look at one of the letters he wrote, and it's the book of 2 Corinthians. It's his second letter that he wrote to the church of Corinth at the time. And I found that Paul actually is pretty open and honest and vulnerable in this book. And so if y'all have your Bible or you have your phone, you can turn there. Look in 2 Corinthians. We're going to be in chapter 12. But I want to give some context to the beginning of this chapter before we dive into the verses that we're going to look at today. Something to note is that at the top of chapter 12, as Paul is writing this letter to Corinth, he is beginning to open up about some limitations that he has in life. And now he uses a different word for it, and he says, hey, I have this thorn in my flesh, which is kind of a weird word or weird verbiage to use, but what he's meaning is he's using it as a metaphor to signify that he has this persistent hardship in his life. And now this could have been a spiritual hardship. It could be a physical hardship. Maybe it was a mental hardship. He doesn't give details as to what exactly it is that he feels like is holding him back and limiting him. But what he does give details about is how many times he brings this before God. And so at the top of chapter 12, you can see, hey, he brings this to God, and he pleads with God 3 different times to completely eliminate this thorn in his flesh, to take whatever hardship this is completely out of his life, and he begs God. But I want you to see what God's response is. We're going to start looking in verse 9. This is God speaking. He says, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses so that Christ's power may rest on me. Let that sink in for a second. Notice as Paul has been pleading with God to take this away, God's initial response isn't to just fix it in the moment. God's initial response isn't just to remove that hardship or that barrier from Paul's life. No, that's not the approach God takes. Instead, he reminds Paul of a really powerful truth that is so easy for me to forget, and I'm sure you guys as well. But God says, hey, my grace is sufficient for you. This grace that God has given, and basically meaning, hey, this love and this favor that we didn't earn, we didn't even necessarily deserve, that has been freely given to us by God, and that is enough for each and every one of us in this room. That is enough to help take us through these hardships and these limitations. And he goes a step farther and he says, hey, actually, my power is made perfect in your weakness. God's power is made perfect. And another word for this word perfect is full or complete. So in those moments where we feel limited or weak or maybe not good enough, God is saying, hey, it's in those moments that my power is actually on full display in you and through you. And so Paul begins to wrap his mind around this. And so his response is, therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. And now, I don't think his thorn in the flesh is initially something that would have made him glad. But in this moment, he's starting to put two and two together. And he's like, hey, yes, even though I'm dealing with this, I can have the power of God working in me and through me. And so he wraps up this portion of the letter and he says, that is why for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions and difficulties. For when I am weak, then I'm strong. That word delight, he has managed to find joy in a situation that joy probably wouldn't normally be found. And then this last line of, for when I am weak, then I am strong. That's an anthem that Paul begins to live by. And an anthem that I think every single one of us can too. But if you're anything like me, you might be thinking like, hey, Ashlyn, this is great for Paul. Like, I'm so happy for him. I'm so happy he figured this out, that he learned this truth from God and actually is transforming his life and bringing him this joy. But like, I don't get it. How is this last line true? Like, how can my weakness actually turn into strength? Or how can I actually have joy in the midst of this hard situation? How does all of this add up and how does it actually make sense? And so even as I begin to read this and kind of wrestle with this, I started to realize, hey, what is true is that yes, God may never just remove the hardship in the moment. But what happens is when our strength runs out, no, God's power immediately rushes in to meet us right where we are at. He doesn't necessarily take the hard thing away immediately, but this is what does happen. God gives us strength in the middle of our weakness and limits. He doesn't take it away. He doesn't meet us after we're through the weakness or the limitation. No, he meets us right there in the middle because he is such a good God and he cares so much about you and me and every single person that you have ever met. He cares deeply and knows every emotion and every desire and every hope and dream, and he is willing to meet us right there and give us the strength to carry on through whatever hardship it is that we may be facing. But I also know that sometimes a truth like this is a little bit hard to understand when you're just reading about it. But what's cool is it becomes so much more real and so much more powerful when you get to see this lived out in the lives of the people around you. So I love that we even got to celebrate a baptism today with Emma, because that is a story of how God has been at work in her life, of how God has shown up for her. And I know that you could ask all your friends in this room of, hey, like, how have you seen God show up for you? And there's something amazing that happens when you're willing to share that. When you get to hear from someone else of how God has shown up in the midst of a difficult time, it grows your own faith. And you may think to yourself, hey, yeah, like, I think I've experienced this before. I mean, how many of you don't have to raise your hand, but think with me, how many of you have experienced peace in a situation that was going completely wrong? Or how many of you have actually experienced joy in the midst of a season filled with grief? Or how many of you have been able to notice that, hey, I can feel this forgiveness from God and this grace from God even when I think I have messed up too badly? There are so many different types of situations where God shows up, where we are weak and we are lacking. And he gives us that strength and he gives us that love. And so this morning, I really just have two simple steps for you. The first is this: I want you to name what's holding you back. I want you to name what might feel like a limitation or a weakness or just a difficult scenario that you're walking through in life. Because I believe that's the first step, that you have to be aware of what is going on. That way you can also be aware of how God is showing up for you in it. And then the second is simply this: don't face it alone. Don't face whatever this is alone. Actually open up to the people around you and tell them about it. Bring them into it. Because they're going to be able to walk alongside you and support you. They're going to be able to speak truth back into you. Maybe they get to share their story with you to remind you of who God is and how faithful and how good he is. And so I believe as Transit and as our individual small groups that we have the ability to rally together and to encourage one another. Because like we said at the beginning, every single person in this room is facing a different struggle or limitation. And so in just a moment, you're going to go to small group. And you're going to get to put all of this into practice. And I would encourage you to do so. But ultimately, I want you to walk away this morning knowing, hey, no matter what it is that you are walking through, no matter what it is that you are carrying, that there is hope available for you because we serve a good God who will give us strength when we need it the most. Let me pray for you. You'll be dismissed. God, I thank you for this day, and I thank you for every student in this room. I thank you that they came to Transit this morning, and I ask that you would be with them. I don't know exactly what every student is carrying, but I do know that you are good enough to show up in it and to help us through it. So I ask that you would give them great small group conversation, that you would give them the courage to share what they are walking through in life so that we truly can rally together and encourage one another. So I thank you for who you are, and I thank you for how you love us. In your name I pray, amen.